In the small town of Villisca, Iowa, there is a house that is infamous for one of the most chilling mysteries in American history, the Villisca Axe Murder case. This house is now considered as one of the most haunted places in America, attracting not only ghost hunters but also adventurous individuals. This is because the Villisca house has a mysterious and frightening past that still lingers today. In 1912, 8 people were brutally murdered by an axe-wielding assailant, and it is said that this house still remains haunted. Yes, you heard it right, former residents and current visitors have reported strange occurrences within this haunted house. Martha and Gavin Lynn bought this house in 1994 and preserved it just like it was in 1912, turning it into an official tourist attraction. They restored the house and removed the electricity and water supply so that visitors could experience the Villisca house as it was in the past. The Villisca house today invites tourists and those interested in paranormal activities to experience its dark history firsthand. According to Gavin and Martha Lynn, visitors to the Villisca house report hearing strange sounds, seeing dark figures hiding, and feeling a deep chill in the air. Not only that, but visitors have also heard footsteps where no one is present and the creaking of doors in empty rooms, feeling a sudden chill passing by them. In fact, they have reported hearing the soft laughter or cries of children. Some even claim to see children playing or talking with an invisible presence. While some ghost hunters attempt to communicate with the spirits of this haunted house, others have reported seeing ghostly figures walking in the hallways. Very few people leave this house without such experiences. Paranormal investigators have shown great interest in the Villisca house. They use Ouija boards, EVP recorders, and other tools to communicate with spirits and uncover hidden truths. But the story doesn't end there. In November 2014, the story of this haunted house took an even more terrifying turn. Robert Stephen Lawson Jr., a 37-year-old from Wisconsin, visited Villisca with some friends for a paranormal tour. Just like other tourists, the events that followed shocked everyone familiar with the haunted house's history. Around 12:45 a.m., exactly the same time when 8 people were murdered in the Moore residence, Robert's friends found him in a room, stabbed in the chest, which appeared to be a suicide attempt. They called 911, and he was immediately taken to a nearby hospital and later airlifted to Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha. Robert physically recovered, but he never publicly disclosed what happened that night. What motivated him to do so? Was it an intensely fearful experience? Or was there some other terrifying force hidden within the walls of the house? Or was it merely a publicity stunt? We may never know. Despite such horrifying events, the Villisca Axe Murder House remains open to this day. In fact, people are willing to pay $480 for an overnight stay as part of a tour package to experience this terrifying and chilling atmosphere. Here, visitors can closely experience the dark history of the house. Some come for thrills, others to catch a glimpse of paranormal activities, and some brave souls even dare to stay the night. But with every sound and shadow, the question persists. What truly haunts this house? Why do visitors continue to report mysterious and frightening experiences? And what compels people to spend hundreds of dollars to stay in the presence of spirits? In today's episode, we will attempt to understand the Villisca Axe murder case. Before we start the story, please be advised that the content of this video is extremely disturbing and heart-wrenching. It may affect viewers with sensitive dispositions. If you feel that such topics might disturb you, or if you are sensitive to such issues, please skip this video, do not watch, and stay safe. We will meet again in the next video with another story. Let's dive into today's story. On June 9th, 1912, in the quiet village of Villisca, Iowa, 8 people were peacefully sleeping through the night. That night, the Moore family, Josiah and Sarah Moore, and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, along with Catherine's 2 friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, were all in the house. Earlier that day, they had attended a special Children's Day program at the church, where Mrs. Moore had also volunteered to help. After the program, all members of the Moore family and their guests returned to the Moore residence and went to bed around 10:30 p.m. It was a typical quiet summer night, but the peace of that dark night was about to be shattered forever. Sometime after midnight, an unknown person silently sneaks into the Moore residence through the back door. This was a small village where doors were often left unlocked. The intruder takes an axe from the Moore household and moves forward. This axe belonged to Josiah Moore himself. The killer had chosen the Moore's own axe as his weapon, which in those days was considered a common weapon of convenience. Nearly every house had an axe, often left outside for easy access. This is why axe murders were fairly common at the time. Axes were everywhere and readily available. After entering the house, the killer takes a lamp from a cabinet, carefully removes the lamp's glass chimney, and tilts the light to dim its brightness, just enough to see his path as he moves forward. He then slowly makes his way upstairs, going past the guest room and the children's room, and finally enters Josiah and Sarah's bedroom. Placing the dimly lit lamp near the foot of the bed, the killer raises the axe high, so high that it leaves marks on the ceiling, and strikes Josiah's head with the blunt end of the axe. The blow is so powerful that Josiah likely died instantly. The killer's brutality was precise and horrifying. After attacking Josiah, he turns to Sarah, who is lying peacefully in bed, and strikes her as well, ending her life as she sleeps. There is no sign of struggle, no indication that either of them woke up, just a dreadful silence. After finishing in the parents' room, the killer heads to the children's room. It's hard even to imagine. One by one, he kills each child as they sleep, giving them no chance to escape. 6 innocent lives are ended in an instant. After killing all 6 members of the Moore family, he moves to the room where the Stillinger sisters, Lena and Ina, are sleeping. His deadly rampage continues there too. The Stillinger sisters had come to spend the night with their friend Catherine, but tragically, they became the killer's victims alongside the Moore family on that dark night. By the end, the killer has taken 8 lives, including 6 children, in that black night. We might think the horror ends there, but it doesn't. The killer had used the blunt end of the axe to kill all 8 victims. Now, he returns to Josiah and Sarah's bedroom and strikes the already lifeless bodies with the sharp side of the axe, smashing their heads. He strikes Josiah's head alone over 30 times. Who would think to inflict such wounds on a person who is already dead? The killer must have been a true psycho. After the murders, the killer's behavior becomes even more disturbing. He goes from room to room, covering all the mirrors and the faces of the victims with blankets, pillowcases, and in the case of the Stillinger sisters, even their own clothes. Yes, you heard that right. Every mirror in the house, every face of the deceased, and even the wall-mounted telephone, shaped like a human face, were covered by the killer. Due to this strange behavior, some believe that the killer couldn't bear to look at the faces of the deceased, even in death. What's even stranger is that he leaves behind a piece of pork weighing about 1 kilogram wrapped in a towel on the floor, and before leaving, he thoroughly washes his hands and the blood-stained axe in a bowl of water. Then, before the dawn breaks, he disappears from the town of Villisca into the darkness. The next morning at 5 a.m., the Moore household was strangely dark and silent. Neighbor Mary Peckham noticed no activity from any of the Moore family members, and this struck her as unusual. By 7 a.m., when she still hadn't seen anyone, her concern grew. She let out the Moores' chickens and called to Josiah's store, but no one answered the phone. Finally, she contacted Josiah's brother, Ross Moore, who unlocked the door with his extra key. What Ross saw inside was horrifying. He immediately stepped outside and called local marshal Hank Horton. Josiah Moore, his entire family, and their young guests had been brutally murdered. Their skulls had been bludgeoned with an axe, leaving them in a gruesome state. In a small town like Villisca, securing a crime scene was nearly impossible. With no modern forensic technology, more than 100 curious townsfolk entered the crime scene out of morbid curiosity, making it almost impossible for investigators to collect solid evidence. In any crime case, securing the crime scene is critical to gathering evidence. However, as doctors and eager townsfolk entered, evidence was destroyed. Some even took fragments of Josiah's shattered skull as souvenirs. This destroyed all chances of gathering any useful evidence, and the killer remained free, walking among them. Villisca was a train town, with about 30 trains passing through daily. This meant that if the killer wasn't local, they could have fled right after the crime by train. Shortly after the bodies were discovered, bloodhound dogs were brought in, but they found no leads. This small town of around 2,000 residents was now gripped by fear. Now, let's pause here and turn to the suspects. Our first suspect is Frank Jones, a respected senator and local businessman with significant reasons to be suspected. Josiah Moore had worked for Jones for 7 years, but in 1907, Feeling dissatisfied with the long hours, he left his job with Frank Jones. Afterward, Moore started a competing business and even took some of Frank Jones's old clients, like John Deere, with him. This angered Frank. But even worse, there were rumors that Josiah had an illicit relationship with Frank Jones's daughter-in-law. The tension between them was so intense that they would never be seen face to face in public. When encountering each other, they would either cross to the opposite side of the street or change their paths entirely. For this reason, suspicions began to rise almost immediately after the murders were discovered, with people starting to believe that Jones might have hired someone to kill Josiah. James Wilkerson, a detective from the Burns Detective Agency, suggested that Jones may have planned these murders. However, no solid evidence was ever found against Frank Jones. Another suspect was William Mansfield, known as Blackie. William gained notoriety around 1914 or 1915 for brutally killing his own wife, her parents, and their child with an axe. However, he had a solid alibi during the Villisca murders, as he was in Illinois at that time, which was confirmed by his foreman and payroll records. Though he was proven innocent, many still believed him to be guilty. Another suspect was George Kelly, an English itinerant preacher who was present in Villisca on the night of the murders, making him a suspect. Known for his mental health issues and sexually deviant behavior, Kelly was only 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 119 pounds, making him an unlikely axe murderer. That night, he attended the same church event, the children's service, along with the Moore family's children. Kelly was the only person to stand trial for the murders, where the first jury ruled 11, one in favor of his innocence, and the second acquitted him entirely due to lack of evidence. Interestingly, he attracted suspicion by posing as a Scotland Yard detective at the crime scene. As local suspects in Villisca gradually dwindled, experts began to believe that a serial killer could have committed these brutal murders. Historian Ed Epperly identified striking similarities among 5 axe murder cases in the American Midwest between 1911 and 1912. In these cases, the murderer used readily available objects like an axe or pipe found in the homes. In many of these murders, the killer would dim the light by bending the lamp wick and removing the glass chimney so as not to be seen. The crime scenes were usually carefully arranged, with blankets used to cover mirrors and windows. Epperly and others suggested that this pattern indicated a psychologically disturbed individual, potentially a serial killer, who traveled across states committing these murders. The Villisca Axe Murders, along with other incidents from 1911, 1912, gave rise to the theory of a serial killer who targeted families and traveled by train. Since all of these murders were committed with an axe or other easily available tools, and each town had a railway, people speculated that the murderer might have used trains to escape to another city after each killing. It's been more than a decade, yet the Villisca Axe Murders remain one of America's most terrifying unsolved crimes. With no fingerprints, no definitive clues, and no clear motive, it almost feels like the work of something beyond human, a darkness that struck and left no trace. This case continues to intrigue historians, detectives, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, and the unusual happenings that reportedly still occur in the Villisca murder house only deepen its mystery. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Villisca Axe murder case leaves us with an important lesson. Never leave an axe or easily accessible weapon outside your home, and remember to lock your doors. Thank you for joining us on a journey into one of America's mysteries. If you, like us, are captivated by these stories, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. And who knows, maybe one day you'll visit Villisca and add your own story to its pages.